Well, good morning and welcome to one of our Saturday Plus coffee talks. I'm Brandon Ranches, the senior curator here at MAM. We're really delighted to have Susie Lindbergh Miller and Gayle Morrison here to talk about this exhibition. It just opened yesterday, so we just kind of finished everything, got the labels on the wall, had everything lit. But these two have been so instrumental to this exhibition in advising us in helping communicate with the Hmong community. They're kind of naturally gifted advocates and supporters and liaisons, and really have done a lot of research. Susie did her PhD work.
Well, let's call it a master's.
I'm prone to exaggeration, so I'll tell you about her other feats of strength and everything else momentarily. But she did her master's thesis on Hmong textiles, which you can see a copy of over on our resource table there. Gayle has done, is a historian and has done incredible amounts of research, and we're really very honored and lucky to have their insights onto the exhibition. This exhibition was prompted by our wonderful collection. We have almost 300 pieces in the collection of Hmong textiles, starting with gifts in 1980 from the Art Associates, all the way up to present. And it's been really interesting and transformative to the collection, which, as you know, focuses on contemporary art. And this special subset of the Hmong textiles are, as we have been thinking about them, contemporary expressions of Hmong culture in our community. So we're really excited to kind of document that. And it continues to change, and I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to do some of the programming. This was a difficult morning. As you'll notice, there's no Hmong people here this morning because they're so involved with the farmers markets and with the Butte Folk Fest. So we wanted just to have something at the beginning of the exhibition that kind of was an overview of the collection. We were prompted by this exhibition with Susie's gift of 238, I think, textiles, 232. Am I getting close, Jen? Textiles in 2011, and it was really these pieces that she's received as gifts, commissioned and purchased over the course of a lifetime of working closely with the community. We have a few other events that I'd like to invite you to. Gayle, as you know, is the author of Hog's Exit, and we're doing a book club here at MAM that will focus on that. It's the second in a series of 3. We started with one in June, and we're really excited to turn our attention to Hog's Exit, which we claim as a local effort. Mm-hmm. That's fair, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got this wonderful book. If any of you have read it and love it, come and participate in the discussion. If you haven't read it yet, we have copies in our gift store, and you can purchase one and read it in the next 10 days. But you'd be hard-pressed to finish maybe in 10 days, but with a Herculean effort, and you can really try to finish it. But even if you haven't read the book, come and listen to the discussion, because it's a really important story. And it, as you know, takes centers around Jerry Daniels, who was a Missoula smoke jumper, and pretty fascinating. So we're really looking forward to that. And that's on the 19th? No, July 26th. No, the 26th.
Maybe
is
it's
the
in
celebration.
there. Susie, tell us.
Help me out here. I had this memorized this morning. We have a...
I think it's the 19th. I think you're right.
It might be the 19th. You've got these bookmarks here.
Look it up.
It is the 19th at 6
Yes.
p.m. I wasn't too far off. And then it talks about the third of our, so just pass those around if you're interested in attending. At 6 p.m. we'll have that discussion for about an hour here in the galleries as well. And then on July 26th, we're really excited about a Hmong American community celebration, and it'll happen from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock that evening, and we'll have dancers, traditional music, speakers. We have some different speakers, including V from Minnesota, who was part of the community here and has moved away, and she's coming back. She helped curate a really important exhibition here at MAM, and we're excited about how that's going to go. So please come back. There'll be Hmong Embroidery for sale and a food truck, a Hmong food truck, that'll be parked out front in case you want to stop for dinner. So.
And the date is?
That's the 26th. Yep. 4 to 7. July. Yep. So these are all July events. So now that I've confused the issue, all of that is printed somewhere. You can grab it before you go, but hopefully you'll join us for the July 19th and July 26th for the next two celebrations. I'm going to turn it over to Susie and Gayle, and they can walk us through the exhibition and give us a little background. Thank you both for coming.
You're very welcome.
Okay, I think I get to start with just a little bit of background on the history. What a pleasure it is to be here and see all these beautiful pieces up. So Susie's going to do a walkabout, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history as far as some of these pieces go. As you probably know, it was 1975 when the Vietnam War ended, and the first Hmong refugees came to the U.S. towards the very end of 75 and early 76. And Missoula was one of the very first and probably the first refugee resettlement site in the U.S. For all kinds of reasons that we won't go into today, but what a lucky turn of events for Missoula that this very interesting, unique, lovely community started to arrive here. Some of the pieces that you'll see today were made in Laos, carried with the refugees when they crossed the Mekong River, which we can give you a tour of that a little later, into Thailand and the refugee camps. Many of the pieces were made in the refugee camps because there's not a lot to do there other than work and support your family as far as keeping food on the table. But the women had more time, and so many of them continued with their traditional embroidery and then started to change it some as they realized that there were some outside markets, not just within their family, within their community. So things started to change. Then when the Hmong came to the U.S., a whole nother layer of change started that has just taken off and continues to today. So even though you might have a feeling that these are static pieces that came from a period in time, they did come from a period in time, but Hmong embroidery has continued to evolve ever since and is continuing now. Who knows where it's going to go in the future. Did you want me to say anything more? I don't think I have anything more right now. I will interject along the way.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Just by, first of all, look at all these people on a Saturday morning. That's pretty amazing. Thank you so much for coming. I got interested in the Hmong here in Missoula in 1982. I was living on a ranch up the Blackfoot. We had sold our cattle. I had more time on my hands than I had had for a very long time. And I saw a little thing in the newspaper saying needed tutors for Hmong refugees. And I thought, well, I could do that. I can go into town rather than just going for groceries and doctor's appointments. So that was my introduction to Ia Vang. And I saw her on a regular basis twice a week for 6 years, I think. And she got through high school. She was older when I met her. Maybe she was 20, although the ages they're not really certain of because they didn't have birth certificates and didn't know exactly how old they were. And I got to know her immediate family, and then I got to know her relatives on many levels. And I got to know many of the Hmong here in Missoula. And I'm a weaver. I love doing handwork. I do quilts. And I feasted my eyes on this amazing skill and joyful color and intricate design of their pandao, which is the word that they would use for their embroideries. What I got to know, then it just led one thing to another, and I then decided that I was taking a course at the university, and then I just got so hooked into taking another course and another course. It was in the religious studies department. And then I decided, they said, well, what about doing a master's degree? Why don't you just keep coming, but you, instead of just scattering yourself? And I thought, oh. By then I knew, I knew what I wanted to do it on, and that was on the traditional textiles of the families here in Missoula. I had to narrow it considerably. I narrowed it down to 8 women who are related, who lived in Missoula or had lived in Missoula and were relatives of ones that were here, and some had moved on to Wisconsin and Minneapolis. But I tell you, it was just the richest time of my life, I think. All those years of communicating. We became such good friends. They would do anything for me. I would do anything for them. You know, it just really was a two-way street, although I benefited far more than they did. But what I felt like, okay, Ia doesn't have time to embroider. She did a little bit, but she was going to school and having to work full time. And who was doing the embroidery? Of course, the grandmothers. And the grandmothers were babysitting with the kids while the parents went to school and worked. So what was, I had this kind of a sense of urgency. I've never, I have a business, a small business. It's like import of traditional textiles from different cultures. I travel with my husband Elon when he's on an agricultural assignment, and I kind of soak up what I can. But the Hmong embroideries to me were a far different thing. It was like knowing that they were a central part of these people's lives and that it might not continue forever. And I'm so happy to hear you say that they're still doing embroidery. I mean, I don't see them here, you know.
In Laos and Thailand.
Oh yeah, okay, there we go.
Qualify.
Oh good, okay. Well that's,
Somewhere in the world they're doing embroidery.
that makes me really happy. I think there are a couple of pieces in here done by a Hmong woman who lived up in Lincoln, and she is still alive, and she's the only one of the embroiderers from whom I collected that's still alive, and everybody else has passed on. So we're talking 1982 to 1988 was pretty much the time that I collected textiles. Then I started collecting for another person, so after I did that, I never collected again for myself. And my whole goal was to put together a collection for posterity. And so I had all these things just in cardboard boxes, you know, in a shed. You were terrible for textiles, but that's where I had them because our house is very tiny. I put a couple on the walls, but we don't have much wall space. So when I walk into this room and see a lot of these are from other people too, and I'm sure they felt the same way I did. This is just incredible, amazing thing. So to see them up here, I tell you, I'm so full of joy right now.
Me too.
You know, it's wonderful. It represents a really important part of my life, which is still ongoing, but it also represents all these different people here in Missoula. Some of them are collected from other places. But I would drive down with the Hmong grandmothers down to Fresno to go to the New Year's celebration. And they would bring all this great food like sticky rice and banana leaves and I don't know what all, and feed me as I drove, you know. And they didn't have driver's licenses at that time. And I don't know, we had a lot of fun. And so some of these are from other places. Anyway, that's enough of that.
Does anybody have any questions before we start doing a little walk around? Anything come to
A
mind?
quick question, I think. Quick. Unique to Southeast Asia is this type of embroidery. Other communities don't do this. Stories and the different styles that are captured in your card.
What do you think? No.
Well, the embroideries,
Very unique.
the story cloths are their own thing. Now, the story is, who knows, but the story goes that story cloths didn't start until they went to the refugee camps and started seeing picture books, especially the Bible, and realized that, oh, we can embroider something else other than what we're already doing. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is what I've always heard, that was kind of a modern, a very early invention in the refugee camps in Thailand. Hmong originally, there's a map up behind you, came filtering down through China over many hundreds of years, then into North Vietnam, and then took a hard turn to the west through the mountains in northern Laos, into the mountains in Burma, and the mountains in northern Thailand. They're hilltop people, so they follow the tops of the mountains. Then the mountains ended, so that was kind of the end of their migration through Southeast Asia as far as a tribal group goes. But that's not what you asked.
No, but it's
Just random information.
Yeah, I support what Gayle said. And there was a particular missionary group called CAMA, or I don't know, acronym, and they supplied cloth and thread for the women in the camps, and even some men started embroidering because it became a way of making money. And they really needed the money to, and sometimes they could sell them in Bangkok or somewhere, but often once they had relatives in the US, I'm just talking about the Hmong here, they would send them here and then we'd buy them at craft fairs. So these are by and large not made here.
So the current cloths being done in Laos and Thailand now, do you think they're a continuation of what was started in the 70s?
Yes, I think that's always a continuation, but you know, it's
Yeah.
going
Are there
in-
other communities around the globe in France and Australia and Argentina with the Hmong diaspora that enjoy the richness of flower cloth and story cloth techniques?
I'd say yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because you see it in other communities throughout the United States, but is it a worldwide
Oh, I think so.
phenomenon?
And I think my point of pointing out the map was that the embroidery tradition, not the story cloths, but the embroideries and the batik and all that, goes back to China. I mean, you can follow it down through that migratory passage.
And they're in China, I mean, it's not unique to Southeast Asia. In China, I have a friend or colleague, Gayle Rossi, who used to live there with her husband and baby. And she is an amazing person about textiles, and hiked with her baby on her back into these small villages. And they have incredible embroidery, and you can kind of see, you know, they have also the indigo dyeing and some similar things, and you can see threads of memory in here that were there. And so they're very rich embroidery traditions. all through the ethnic minorities in China. It's amazing. The Hmong are just one of the several or many ethnic minorities, I would say. Yeah.
When you begin to talk about the pieces in the exhibit, will you give us some more history about when the first refugee camp was established and what that period?
I can chime in on that.
Yeah, when
After Susie's done her
No,
yes,
or
as
we
we're-
can do it, yeah, in any order, it doesn't matter.
Let's do that first. Let's talk about
Yeah.
the evacuation and the
Yeah.
posters you brought in and the camps.
Okay, there's one question down there.
Go ahead. Did you even do that? Okay. Okay. You know, I can remember for years buying, you know, pillowcases and aprons for gifts at the UC. And but I don't see that anymore. So is it that the grandmothers have died and it isn't carried on to this, the tradition hasn't been carried on?
I talked to my friend Ia Vang, the woman I tutored when we were first putting together this show, and asked her who can come, who still embroiders. We'd love to have them embroider in the museum. And she said, well, there's one woman that still sells embroideries, and she embroiders. And I said, well, she's more than welcome to sell them in the gift shop if she wants to, you know, but I just trying to get an embroiderer in here. And I saw,
So she'll be here on the 26th.
we hope.
We hope.
Yeah.
That's what Ia has said. Is that
Oh, did she? Oh,
she
great.
set her up and.
Oh, that's
she's planning on
perfect.
Coming down.
Oh, good.
Still,
Oh,
we hope.
We hope.
yeah. No, that's great. Because Ia has been wonderful in lining up people to join in on the celebration on the 26th. And without her insight into the community, because I'm long gone from you know, the everyday visits. But let's see, what was the other part of that question?
No, I just.
Oh, and there's the woman from Lincoln who is still alive and lives in Missoula. She no longer lives in Lincoln. And I saw her son at this Hmong America's celebration. And I said, be sure she comes because I love her embroidery so much, and there will be something of hers on the wall, and I just would love her to know how much we celebrate her work. But she can't do it anymore because her eyesight isn't good enough. So.
Okay, now I'm going to give you a quick tour of this big cloth. I think that's maybe the best way, the easiest way to answer your question.
Did I spill my water yet? No.
Whoa, I knew that would happen. Between the water and I need my pointing finger. Okay, so this is a classic example of a very large story cloth, and you actually can read it. I was telling Brandon a couple of days ago that what you see here is not figments of one's imagination. These are actual events, actual places that have happened in Hmong history. So it starts from over here in China. Here's the China Wall. This is the Hmong people leaving China, coming into Laos. Of course, perspective is off, if you understand that. Coming into Laos, coming across the mountains. This area is Mong Chang, which was the CIA air base, way up in the mountains. So those are two photos of the base itself. And in this area, you can actually, this is the home of General Van Pao. This is Samoson. It was the community building. These are the T-28s lined up on the runway. This is a C-46, an H-34 helicopter. Very busy air base. At the time, it was busier than O'Hare International. There were that many planes coming in and out, but it was not marked on any map anywhere. It was a secret air base. So, and then here's where all the Hmong are living. And you continue on. This is now up to 1975. This pretty much covers 1960 to 75. This is after just as the Americans are pulling out of Southeast Asia, this terrible event that happens, a massacre at the Hinhook Bridge. And then you have they're coming down the road, and then they're running back, telling each other. Then they escape into the jungles. And this is all about the fighting and dying, basically, and then coming down through the mountains. Pardon?
Who were they fighting with?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Communist North Vietnamese and Communist Pathet Lao. Thank you for asking. Sometimes I get carried away. And crossing the Mekong River into the refugee camps, I think that was your original question, in Thailand. The Mekong splits the two. And these are the Thai border guards receiving them as they come across the river. And then these people with funny colored hair, that's the Americans. They're blonde and red hair. You know, fascinating too, this whole culture that has black hair. And so they're swearing who they are, and then they're getting on this airplane and heading to the U.S. So you actually can read this entire cloth if you know what you're looking at. It's not a made-up story. So some of them are. Some of them are from traditional legends, but this is a historical one. Yes.
What did you bring in today with the posters?
What did I bring in with the book? Well, it shows the air base, it shows where the T-28s are, it shows a little bit about Von Kahl's house, and it just approved really what I said.
Hard photo evidence.
What I say is true. And with that, maybe Susie, and yes, here are two more adjunct pictures over here. There's one of the H-34 helicopters loading refugees, and the black and white one is one of the last days of the final air evacuation in May of 1975, when the U.S. orchestrated, actually it was Jerry Daniels who orchestrated this secret evacuation of 2,500 Hmong from the air base in Laos, Long Chang, to Udon, Thailand. And those are people running to get on the plane. If you look closely, you can see their flip-flops are laying on the tarmac because you don't turn around or stop to pick anything up and go. Now that picture is worth looking at closely.
Wow.
Yes.
So from a distance, it looks at least like you can kind of follow the chronology by kind of the direction the people are facing as you're kind of looking across. Are there kind of multiple chronologies going on at the same time? Kind of where things kind of start over in China with the wall. It looks like there are maybe some things that diverge and go east, and some go south, but they all kind of seem to end up in the same area.
What did I say? Some of it is a little creative. This is still actually Laos up to maybe about here. The Mekong River is Laos on both sides, but also Hmong came from China down into northern Thailand. So yes, here's their sort of traditional life is going on here in northern Thailand, while war is going on the Laos side. But there's a lot of wiggle room. So yeah, this is more of the traditional life that's being shown here. So they have views of both of those.
Would you talk a little bit about General Van Hal? Because he was so important to those people, and he was even important to Montana and to Jerry.
Well,
think you just said it all. He was extraordinarily charismatic. Hmong were a neglected and rejected hill tribe group as far as the Lao and the Thai and the Chinese, it doesn't matter which group, go. They had very little to no political clout, they had no schools, they had no hospitals. They were left alone, which to a great extent they didn't mind. They didn't really want to be co-opted into the lowland culture. So I'm not saying it was a contentious separation, but it did mean that they were pretty much left in the dust. Von Pao came up through just one of those people, you know, they're in every culture, one of those people that had a bigger idea. And one of the ways out of the mountains, he did not want to be a farmer, which everybody else was. Excuse me. And so he joined the military at a very early age. That was the French military before Dien Bien Phu in 1954. He joined the French and came up through some of the lower ranks there. The French failed, left. The Americans came in, and he, at that point, spoke some French. He had learned Lao, spoke Hmong, and just had one of those personalities that was completely dynamic. And so the early Americans had heard about him back in the late 50s after the French had left. They heard about this, I don't know, lieutenant maybe at that point, I'm not sure, that really was quite forceful that they should get in contact with. And so they actually sought him out to meet with him, and he was exactly the guy they were looking for. Just a natural leader, and already had the military experience and the languages, and so they started working together very closely, and he eventually became the one and only Hmong ever made a general, and you know, basically ran along with the Americans. It was a partnership. This incredible air base. So he was very loved by his people, not without a few detractors. It's not that he was universally loved, but you can't be in a position like that and be universally loved. He was very effective.
Just a related question. Who appointed him general?
The Lao government.
Lao?
I'm sure at the request of their U.S. partners, but yes, he was a general within the Lao structure. So there were 5 military regions. He was the head of all of Military Region 2. So there were 4 Lao generals and Von Pao. He remained in that position right to the end in May of 1975, and then was Evaki and Jerry Daniels were the last 2 to go that were left in Longcheng. That's a whole nother story. We're not doing that today. And he came here. He had been to Missoula and to Montana several times, maybe 3 times. Over the years. He and Jerry Daniels were very close. And so he had already been here. He had seen the mountains. And when he got to Washington, D.C., and they wanted him to stay in Virginia, stay in D.C., stay close by, see how things were going in Southeast Asia, he said, no, I'm going to Montana. And so he had a house in Missoula and a farm down in the Bitterroot, and was here for a good number of years, was unable, you know, he never wanted to be a farmer, right? And so now he's back on a farm, and it did not make him very happy, and he was not successful, he was not skilled in that. And so he eventually migrated to Southern California, but the Hmong community, much of it remained behind. There's about 200 in this area now, Hmong left. There were a couple thousand at one time, but no longer. But the ones that are here feel like Vang Pao. They love the mountains, they love the Montana lifestyle, and they're here.
Yeah, when I did my research, Refugee Assistance Corporation, I was on the board at that time, but they had 224 Hmong were here at the time, like 86
They're
or so.
very
And
good at
it's
running
pretty similar now.
censuses.
I mean,
So, yes,
Yeah.
I would rely on that. Now, are you ready for a walkabout? I don't want you to miss out on hearing about these pieces.
these were one of the few things that you'd see here in Missoula in 1982 and on. It was the only costume piece you'd ever see, unless it was the New Year's celebration. These are baby carriers, and everybody had them. And so they would, I had Ia Vang, you can see it in my thesis thing, show how she would get a child up on her back using one of these, because as you can see, it's just a flat piece, no jerry packs or whatever else I used to use for my kids. The designs on this one are, the Hmong are, most of the Hmong here in Missoula were called white Hmong. There are all these nomenclatures that they don't use themselves. They would call this Hmong Samnua, and Samnua is the region where they were from, in northeast Laos, kind of up near Vietnam. It's not that far. Anyway, they have these long straps, and they hoist the kid up on their back and tie it, and they leaves their hands free because they were always working. And so they couldn't just put a baby in a little swing or something, a Johnny jump up thing. They had to carry them at all times. And of course, the children would be quieted. They would be right next to the mother's body. There's nothing between the mother's body and the baby. This goes behind and holds the baby on. The tiny babies are held on the front, and so the mother can prop up the head, keep the neck, and like the newborns. These are just little children's things. This, you could just walk around and look. This, of course, is made to sell at a craft fair, and I snapped it up. A little bib. This would be a purse that would be worn. Men, women, and children wear these purses as part of their costumes. And you can see pictures of them all decked out for their New Year's celebration. They'll be wearing those. This is just to show a difference. This is a batik, indigo batik done with wax resist, and then they applique these red X's and different shapes onto it. And I think that really they call this part of the baby carriers the body, and this is the mouth, and this is the heart. And this is the heart. So these are important. The design areas are the heart of the body and the heart of the mouth. Red is used always in these baby carriers that I saw, and I think, there are different theories about it, but I think red is a protective color against malevolent spirits. And I think that a baby's life is vulnerable, maybe especially in Laos. Now it's in the U.S. sometimes, it's not, but it's a way of keeping this precious baby alive, to have that. These are collars that I picked up in northern Thailand at an open market, but they just show some of the amazing fine cross-stitching that you see. This is, there are many techniques, but this is This is applique on, you see, and this is the snail design, which became same as that baby carry, only this is a finer example. It celebrates, I mean, the snail could be, some people have interpreted it, as the family line spinning out and growing in a continuous circle. And then when they're joined, it has to do with family, male, female, procreation, but it's a symbol of marriage, and you'll see these in almost all of the Hmong Samnua costumes that I found here in Missoula. Lo and behold, one day at a craft fair, I saw this piece, and I just, oh my gosh. And so you might want to look at that closely. It's very, very fine cross-stitch embroidery. And it was done, I think that one was done in maybe in the camps. But let me see if, well, anyway, it wasn't done in the US. And it was an old collar, and to sell, she put a frame on it. So then it's something you can hang on the wall or use in your home or put on a table. But I was thrilled to find this because I hadn't seen that kind of fine work on the craft sale, so that was really great. Let's see. This is reverse applique, and it's a very fine piece of reverse applique where they take a background and a single piece of white cloth, and they fold it and they make cuts. And you can see the perfection in this. So this white was covering all of it. These aren't separate things at it. What they've done is they've tucked under the green strip right here. They've tucked under half of it up here, and the other half is under this little thin strip. Meticulous work with very, very fine needles. And I had somebody try to teach me how to do the snail. And I was at home continuing it, this one snail. And I put the needle down on the table, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't feel it. I said, no, it's like this. It's like a hair. And so they have to split our kind of bulky sewing thread and pull out little filament from it and thread it through. So, I mean, what respect I had after trying it myself. This beautiful piece was done by my friend Mai Yang, and I commissioned her to do a piece, gave her free rein, and I said, I want you to do something that you might do for your mother, or I want you to choose the colors that you love. I didn't want her to do it in beige and blue like all the ones from the camps, because they chose really safe colors for American living rooms. Have you noticed that a lot of the story cloths are muted in background? Certainly not the embroidery thread, but the, you know, just so it goes. So she chose this design, and I didn't know what she was working on. I had no idea. She just did it, and maybe 2 or 3 months later, she said she was done. So she showed me this piece, and I just really got tears in my eyes. What she said, this is cut and sew as you go, which is the translation in English for the type of technique. THO, I think it is in Hmong. But they only cut a little bit at a time, whereas the snails are all cut at once. They cut the whole design, and then they put it on and tack it on. But this one she does, but look at how absolutely perfect this is. And she felt like this. She explained, I said, what does this mean to you? And she told me that through translation, she didn't speak any English. And this is, again, was one of the family members that I did my thesis on. These are mountains, and these are all the different valleys. And this is the center or heart. And in Hmong tradition, the center post of the home is the most important part of the house. The male baby's placentas are buried in the earth at that placenta, at that cross. And they, in the funeral chants, they are led back to their origin. They have to go everywhere they've ever lived, back to their origin, and they retrieve the placenta before they can go on to their next life. And so the male children, I mean the males are born again into their family, and the males' wives are born again not into their birth family, but into their husband's family. So the woman also has to go get her placenta, which is buried by which door? Well, anyway, it's by a doorway. And, but the male is the center that keeps going forever. Anyway, she said, this is Laos, these are the mountains, and this is home. This is home. And there was another woman there helping translate, and Mai was talking, and she said, and this is Missoula, and this is my home. That's when I just about lost it. You think of all they've given up in their lives, and then they come here, and it's just pretty amazing to have people from other cultures come and live in Missoula. I'm just, you know, they share so much. And then, so I won't go, there's not too much time, but a lot of snail designs, you can look at them and see which ones are made in Missoula. These are funeral collars, but they never use that term. They're called elders' garments or old people's clothes. They are gifted, and some women even make some for themselves because they're not sure who's, you know, if their kids are going to be doing that here in Missoula. They will get multiple gifts of things for the time when they die, and they don't think it as anything morbid at all. It just brings them tremendous joy to know that a family member is caring about them enough to gift these funeral garments that they will then be buried in. And these are all really poignant and important for the Hmong community here in Missoula. I mean, these were things that they were making. Again, that Mai Yang did this one, who also did that one. It's just a really striking, amazing design. This particular design was also made by her, or what was that one by her? Yeah. Mai Yang also made this. She said, she wanted to make this one for me because it's very, very traditional. This was the oldest design that she knew, that her great-grandmother, her grandmother, her mother, and she all did funeral collars with this design. And this represents the door of the house, of the Hmong home and the house. And these are all the trenches that were dug around it for the monsoon season, so that the water would, you know, this would be uphill, and so that's trenched so the water will go downhill and not take their house away. And so also I interpret also that the door is a passageway, and this piece was used at a very, probably the most important passage for a Hmong person is the death and rebirth. So a lot of different techniques, tuck and fold applique, where they have, that one is actually, this is tuck and fold, very simple looking. They just take a strip, tuck it, and stitch it on like that. Let's see. Lots of baby hats around. There was one, is there one with the protective fetish on it?
The chicken hat with the...
Oh, yeah, I guess I went by. Yeah, well, we can look at that when you go by. There, my Lee had made for me a baby hat, a chicken hat, which has this protuberance on the, and those are for girls. And there are two little fetishes on top, stitched together, and she said it's the mother and child. And this is for added protection for the vulnerability of a baby. So, boy's hat here, and these cutout designs, they cut out paper figures.
And there's an example of the paper figures.
Oh, is there? Oh, good.
In the windowsill over
Oh,
there.
great, yeah. They use them in ceremonial, the shaman will cut out paper figures and they use them. And so this is a melon hat. This was actually a man's hat, I think, but with these, and again, protective figures on it. These were made to sell. I think that also. They're wonderful, wonderful pieces. They didn't use these in their life. I think that was probably, maybe somebody made, I can't remember the date on that one, but this my dear friend Ia made for me. And she did cross stitch it. I don't know how she had time because she had so many kids by that time. And I just, you know, when I see it, it just really makes me happy to think of her doing that in her very busy life. Different type of stitching here that you can look at, not done in Missoula. This is by the woman that lived up in Lincoln, and just look at it when you get up close and just see all the little details of it. It's quite wonderful. And Chauvin, I think, is Buntavi Kia Tukaisi. We just call her V. She's coming on the 26th. She is the most amazing woman I think I know. She's about half my age, you know, the age of my kids. So if you have the opportunity on the 26th, she'll give a talk. She'll talk about the work she does, multicultural work she does. She's a wonderful teacher. And I think her mother made that. Anyway.
Just as a side note, when you look at this clothing, the moms would work on clothing for the family, a new outfit, all year long until Hmong New Year. And then everybody would dress in their new clothes for the festivities. And so the daughters would start learning very early, what,
Yeah.
5, 6 years old. They're starting to learn some of the basic techniques because when they become teenagers, they want to be able to present how good their work is. That's one way to catch the eye of a good man.
That's true. Yeah, they're pretty wonderful, and they all have these suitcases full of costumes that are collected, and they want fresh ones, you know, each year, and then they want to be in style, so they see something at somewhere else on a video from Fresno, and next thing you know, they're recreated in Missoula or wherever.
Susie, we saw each other at the first annual Hmong American celebration on Mother's Day in the park, and you commented that you observed that many of the styles and costumes had shifted and had brought in other influences and were kind of in the process of changing. What were some of the changes you saw? Can you articulate any of them?
A lot less embroidery. But they now can buy manufactured ribbons that have intricate looking things on them. And the styles were really different. You know, they do dances, they do couples dancing. It's really fun to see. And the music is from, I don't know, where do you think? Do they do that in California too? Yeah. And so for me, you know, as I was looking at my thesis yesterday, and So what else is new? It's always new.
It's
You know, they're
amazing.
always, but of course, there's less handwork.
Some of
But
these fabrics are pre-stamped, so that they'll take one of those intricate designs and then actually stamp it onto a fabric. So from a distance, it appears
You have the same flower cloth, but then it's stamped,
Right.
printed.
And a lot of what I saw, they weren't even mimicking like the snails or anything like that. It was just new style. And they would, when I was collecting, they were always surprised. They really thought they put something over on me by selling me the old things. With maybe a little stain here or there. But
Well, the baby carrier, I noticed, still has little stains from whatever child was carried. Most of them are hidden from exhibition,
Yeah.
but I noticed that while we were installing.
Yep, had an accident.
They really put one over on you.
So, yeah, so it's, anyway, there's just too little time and too many memories to try to do more than that. But I just want to say what a blessing, yeah, these lives have meant to so many of us. I know Susie is taught.
You talk about thee and my heart
Just, oh,
explodes.
I know, because she was such a good friend of Susie's. And she really kind of changed my life in a way. Because I was going through kind of a rough patch for a while. And she said, Susie, it's your new life. And I thought, oh, you're right. You know, just to hear it from...
Changed by some of the Hmong men, and without going into all the background stuff. I had come back to school to visit after I'd been there, and they were all hunkered down outside, and so I hunkered down and visited with them. And one of them said, what are you doing now? Because I wasn't still teaching there. And I said, I'm looking for a job. And this is something that I have thought of 8 billion times since. He said, why do you need a job? You already have a house and a car.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. Yeah, it's very humbling and uplifting at the same time. Yeah.
Well, are there any further questions for either Gayle or for Susie? Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, really, thank you so much.